All right, welcome everyone. I hope you're all well. Thank you for joining us today for this GRE verbal workshop. My name is Zubair bin Naeem, and I'm an Education USA advisor with the Islamabad office. Today's session is for everyone who's interested in learning about the GRE verbal portion of the exam. Before we start, a little bit about who we are. Education USA is a global network under the Department of State. It's made up of over 425 international student advising centers in more than 175 countries. We are your official source to US higher education. Advisors work with advisees to provide updated, comprehensive, and unbiased information on higher education in the United States. We are part of the USEFP, the United States Educational Foundation in Pakistan, which also houses the Fulbright Commission in the country. USEFP promotes mutual understanding between the people of Pakistan and the people of the United States through educational and cultural exchange. We have offices in Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad, but we're available to any student who needs support or advising throughout Pakistan by call or email or virtual calls, preferably. So just a little bit about this session before I hand it over to our presenter, Mr. Zulfiqar. Let me just give you a quick introduction about our presenter. Mr. Zulfiqar he has previously been awarded the Fulbright Scholarship, and he went to Cornell University on the Fulbright Scholarship. He has given the GRE, and he is here to share his expertise on the verbal section of the GRE with you. Now, many of you may know, some may not know. If you're intending on applying for the Fulbright Scholarship, then it is mandatory to give the GRE. All right. Your application, in other words, is not going to be entertained if you do not submit a GRE score alongside with your Fulbright application. All right. So that's why the GRE is necessary and important to give, which is why you're here for this workshop, hopefully to understand how to attempt the GRE. Furthermore, if you are applying independently for a master's or PhD directly to a university outside of the Fulbright scholarship program, and you're hoping that the university itself will give you a scholarship, then a good GRE score can also help strengthen your profile. So with that, thank you, Zulfikar, for taking the time out to be with us today to explain to the audience about the ins and outs of the verbal section of the GRE. Always good to see you and work with you. And I'll hand it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Zubair, and welcome everyone. We will start our session. I'm just having a little bit problem with this mouse pad that has stopped supporting me. I'll share the screen. We'll go along. Uh, are you able to see this now? The presentation that I've pulled up?
Yes, very able to see it.
Okay. So in this session, we will be covering some overview of the verbal reasoning section, some breakdown of the question types that we have, and diving deep into some of the questions within the question types that we have. Some practice examples, explanations, kind of core strategies or approaches, because this is an 1 hour session. It's not going to be too lengthy, but we will orient you well about the verbal section and what key parameters you need to take into consideration. We will focus strongly upon the reading comprehension, which covers a very significant portion of the verbal section. We will briefly see if we are able to talk about the scores and then give you some suggestions around GRE in general as well and how you should prepare for the test. So GRE is a test which, of course, it's like any other test, but the importance of every test comes with what it is used for. It tests your ability and skills around your preparedness for a graduate level program. These are rigorous programs, and one needs to be able to pace up with the class and the entire course that is going on. And your preparedness for such a rigorous program is decided by certain key skills. And in case of verbal, we will see what sort of skills those are. So they are assessing those skills in order to see how ready Are you one quick announcement that from September 2020 onwards, the test format has slightly been changed and it is a much shorter version. So whenever you are preparing, you must be aware about this. Currently, the format that is in has two sections, which used to be the case earlier as well, but it's much shorter. The section one has 12 questions and you have 18 minutes for that. The section two then has 15 questions and 23 minutes. So almost 1.5 minutes per question, but that's not how you should be working on because some of the questions may be lengthier, as you will see. Familiarizing yourself with the test screen and many other aspects reduces your anxiety. So for example, the test screens will look like something around this. You will have option to quit the test, exit from the section, mark a particular question, and then when you press this review button, you will see uh, that what questions you have attempted, what questions you have not, and what questions have you marked as reviewed, to be reviewed. You will have a calculator, help button, and other aspects around it. Uh, you can shuffle between the questions, so it's not necessary that you have to start from question one and way through to the last question. You can jump. However, it's not advisable as much. Still, if you're feeling tough about feeling question to be tough, you can skip that for now. Uh, I would highly suggest, even in that case, you should mark your answer because there is no negative marking. Uh, and then you can review your questions and find the full info of the entire section. You can hide the time screen as well, so that you're not too tense about it, but you must then be aware about what's going on unless the section starts to leave. Um, Scoring range, it is between 130 to 170. I have one more slide around this. We will see if we find time that why the scores starts from 130. So if you are scoring 130, that's a zero score. And the 170 is then the highest score. So in essence, the verbal session or even the quant one is between the range of 0 to 40, which is reflected by 130 to 170. Uh, Minimum score is 130, maximum is 170. There is no partial credit, so you can't have 141.5 score. You can only have 141 or 142. Uh, and there is always a 1 point increment. You can't just jump up 5 points by attempting a question correctly. Percentiles are more important than the scores, which tells you how many people are you ahead of. So if there are 100 test takers or 1,000 test takers, what percentage of people are behind you if they are all queued up in the range from high score to the low score. Okay. And very key thing, it's a section adaptive test. We will take some questions towards the end. So I hope that should be fine. And you will have most of the answers covered for the purposes of regular orientation. It's a section level adaptive test. What does it do? Back like 15 years ago, GRE used to be a normal test and no adaptability in the test. Question flows from right, typical Pakistani questions usually move, starting usually from the easier ones, moving towards the difficult ones, then change the approach that they adopted a question level adaptability. So if a question comes up on the screen and you answer it correctly, the next question will be of higher level. And then if you attempt it correctly, the next question will be even higher difficulty level. And based on that, once you start decreasing, then it starts to give you a higher level, lower level. And by the time you are done with 20 questions, it will judge your aptitude in that particular section. However, in that part, as you can see, you cannot jump from one question to the next because the next question is difficulty level is decided by the previous one. So you have to have a different approach, which also um, the different variations in the learning levels and the aptitude in the verbal. So what they've done is that the first section will almost be similar. So these are not the similar questions, by the way. It's just the difficulty level that will be on the average, same for everyone in the first 12 questions. And then you will have a math section, by the way, and then you will come back to the verbal. Um, what happens is that your performance in those 12 questions will decide the difficulty level of the next section. Okay, so the next section can carry higher weight if you have done your first section quite well. The second section will be tough, and even performing some questions correctly on that will get you in that higher band. So what happens is that if this is 130 and this is 140 and you performed above average, let's say 155, so the next section will have a variation of difficulty from, let's say, 148 to 160 or 162. And all of that section will be in that range of difficulty. And that will give more precision to the section that you're attempting. So there's no single mark increase with one question increment. It is more than one, as you can see. How GRE section level adaptation works, this I explained. If you perform your first section excellent, the next section will be hard. If you perform your section good, you will have medium. But it's not like this, that if you are intentionally performing average on the section one so that you get an easier section two. What happens is that with this approach, as I'm highlighting, um, this average score on section one will lead you to a lower band. So they will decide that you are somewhere between 130 and 140. So no matter how well you do in section two, your scores will not be able to go beyond, as in this case, beyond 140. So it's not that you have to do all the questions correctly in section two, and that's why you perform low on the section one. It's the band decision that happens. So the first section decides the band of your score, and the section two will then place you within that band in a particular mark. GRE verbal basically assesses your ability to analyze and evaluate written material. Why is that the case? You see, master level programs in US and generally all over the world in good universities are very rigorous. They require a lot of reading. They require a lot of active engagement with the text. They require a lot of your mental abilities to work around what is being said, what connotations are being said, how a complex thing is described. I always mention this, that life is complex, and that is why explaining something or understanding something in good detail requires that complexity. However, to express that even verbally in a written form or in any other form requires the complexity. So your grip on that complexity is quite important. So the verbal section works around that. It assesses your ability to analyze and evaluate the written material, then your ability to synthesize the information. So there's a long text that you have read, but are you able to synthesize the information and then filter it in whatever way it's required? And then analyze the relationship between different parts within a sentence, within a paragraph, between the sentences, and within paragraphs in a particular passage. Okay? And then recognize the relationships even between kind of words being used and the concepts those words are reflecting in that particular context. And it does a very good job in assessing those skills, by the way, GRE verbal section. It draws heavily on the vocabulary and your contextual understanding, detect relationship among words, draw inferences, understand the logic of how a, a statement is being said, what logic it is using. Is it a strong logic? Is it a weak logic? And to what direction it is leading you? We will see this in reading comprehension passage practice that I have dedicated quite some slides around that. And also, you see, till now, for example, if I have spoken for 10 or 15 minutes, I have talked quite a few things. Maybe some of those are minor examples or some irrelevant points as well. And there are some major themes around. In every text, you will see there are major themes. And then there is some minor details about some other aspects or some irrelevant aspects, or maybe something which is not very much a part of the major theme of the text. So you will have to recognize the difference between those points and then able to summarize your ideas. Understanding the passage structure. So for the same point that I want to drive in a written material, I can write it in a different way and someone else can write it in a different way. So the structure of the passage will change accordingly. Whether you are able to understand the tone and the purpose and the perspective of the author, whether he or she is giving another person's perspective, giving his or her own connotations around it, and many such aspects. And then overall, your ability to apply reasoning skills. So verbal section is basically a reasoning skills section. So in summary, it's your ability, core skills required for this success, your critical thinking, your vocabulary knowledge in particular context, understanding the nuances and the tones, and then eliminating the wrong options. So maybe if someone is misperceiving it, that is also being tested if you are drifted away from what is being um, aimed at within the available text. So familiarity with the test, this slide we have already covered. So now we will talk about what the section has, what type of questions it has, and what scoring on the verbal section leads to you. General strategies that are required within this particular section is time management. Most of the Pakistani students do find it very challenging. It's not just because of the difficulty level of the vocabulary or the text. It's also because even if we are able to understand the text, but we are requiring a longer duration, that is not going to help, because within the master's level course that you will be undertaking, a certain pace is required from you. So time management, generally, and then within the test, you can see skimming versus reading thoroughly. How deep are you getting into the text, whether it is required or not? So that judgment call will be important. And then elimination strategies will also be important. Context clues will be very, very key. Be very sure about this, that if you have a background knowledge of that particular text, it is absolutely not helpful. In fact, in many cases, it can go against you. So if I don't have any understanding about archaeology, the text comes on archaeology subject, it doesn't matter. In fact, it is helpful because I have to pick each and everything from that particular context only. So my broader understanding will be helpful, but my deeper understanding of the subject matter will not be helpful at all. These are the three sections that come into the verbal reasoning. Your reading comprehension, there are question types around reading comprehension, and these are 50% of the entire section. Text completion is somewhere around 20-25%, and then sentence equivalence is around 25%. This will be the general split. There is an analytical writing question that we are not covering in this section. In this session, sorry. In text completion, let's describe what it is, what strategies are usually used, common mistakes that we can do. As you can see, this is a shorter session, so we will not be able to cover in detail about this, but I'll try to give you some broad ideas. And this helps. The orientations are generally helpful for you because they make the approach and the familiarity and your drive towards learning and making progress around that particular sections of preparedness much stronger. Okay. Very simple first question, if you can all read, and I will see if we will need some responses. For example, even though human beings dash fundamentally they are similar, as you can clearly see. So these are very simple questions, but the approach is important to glean out from them. There are two parts of this first sentence. One comes before the comma and the second comes after the comma, and the blank will be somewhere in one of those. Since the sentence has this part called even though, it means whatever is coming as a blank for human beings to be of that particular type or characteristic, the second part is essentially reversing it. And the second part we know is fundamentally they are similar. It must be the case that human beings are dissimilar or diverse, okay, in general sense. Second sentence, Britain has long been a dash society, and in recent years, the gap. And again, you see there are two parts of this sentence. There's a comma, which clearly tells you that there are two parts. And the second part starts with and. So as you can see, someone started an argument, and after a comma, it says and. So your car direction, your movement is still continuing in the same direction. So it's not reversing. Okay. So this is a broader theme that is part of almost every sentence completion question type. And the second part is completely filled, so we can guess about the first one. The second part says, in recent years, the gap between the rich and the poor has grown even wider. So this is another clue, ever more wider. So it means it has never been that wider. So the first sentence must also be talking about some inequalities in that society. So Britain has long been an unequal, inequitable, or whatever the word options that will come around you. Sentences usually have keywords in sentence completion. Keyword does not necessarily has to be a word. So in our case, this simple comma can help. It's not a keyword, by the way. There can be colons, there can be semicolons. We will come to that. So those will tell what to expect in the next part. So they do not have to be words. They can be symbols as well, these special characters that we have. In our case, we have even though. In this one, we have and before the comma. And these are clues. Ever wider is another clue. And the third point, that sometimes the connector itself may have to be put in the blank. So in this particular case, let's say even though is mentioned. Let's say even though would not have been mentioned, and human beings are diverse was the sentence. Fundamentally, they are similar. So both statements are given, but as you can see, one is going in this direction, another is going in this direction. The blank can be around this, even though. Okay. Uh, so there are two parts. Most of the sentences will either have one direction and then there will be a negative direction. The negative is not in terms of bad, it's terms of reversal of the previous line of thought. Not all information is used. Be very careful about this. GRE tests are designed after a lot of research, and they understand where students fall into traps or misunderstand the main flow. So there will sometimes be unnecessary information within the sentences that you will have to overlook based on the context that you will see. And that should not prejudice your judgment around the options available. So the sense of direction is the most key thing that you have to be aware in a text completion bit. For this one, Zubair, I would like people to give me answers in the Q&A. If they can just mention A, B, C, D, or E, what they think is the correct answer. Please read this sample question. I would really love if everyone can just respond because there is no negative marking. So just pick a random answer as well and only mention the A, B, C, D, E. Meticulous. Wonderful. We have a good sense. Most of the people are drifting towards A, almost equal numbers towards B and E. Uh, okay. Now you see, as we were talking, there will be two parts. In this one, we have something in two parts. The first part is not a proper sentence. It's a description of some professor, which is a staunch supporter of impartiality. Okay, so it's not changing direction in this particular case, as we had seen previously. So this one is not about change of direction as such. It is going in the same thing, same direction, same logical sequence. It's about making sense of what does this first part mean. And I am very surprised, and you will also be surprised, and this will be a good lesson for all of you. You see, a staunch supporter of impartiality, why would you say that? You say that and then continue from a comma onwards in the same sentence because there is some link between what this particular characteristic of that professor requires the next fill in the blank. So he's not detail oriented. He's not checking those papers and assessing students in a very detailed manner. The meticulous is being very detail oriented. Okay? It's not just responsible. It's about being detail oriented. Are we seeing anything in the sentence? So this is the main difference. What happens is that when you're talking about uh, meticulousness, you're talking about detailed orientedness. But is this aspect relevant in the context? So most of these talks that you listen around, these are helpful uh, only if you pick the right points. And in our case, we have been talking a lot about context, context, and context. So in this case, the context is nothing around meticulousness. Okay? While we can keep it, I would, by the way, answering options, I would suggest you to mark your papers with A, B, C, D, E. And once you cross out a particular option, just cross it out and do not consider it again. It will save you some time. So in my case, I would rather delete meticulous part, but if one of you wants to keep it, you can put a question mark around in your paper that, okay, you will reconsider unless you find a better option. Logical. So yeah, it's a positive quality being logical and being impartial. So impartiality is given, meticulousness is positive, logical is positive. It's not just positive to positive. It's about the context, and the context has nothing about logicalness. It's not talking about how well reasoned are you in their assessment, the professor. Then you're talking about arbitrary. He can never be arbitrary. He is impartial. Arbitrary is the opposite of being uh, detail oriented or being very specific. But that's not the case here. Arbitrary, in fact, is a negative word, and we are definitely taking it out. Arbitrary is out for sure. Why? Because we are talking about a professor's positive quality, but then we are confused which positive quality to highlight. Cursory is also negative. So if he is detail oriented, he cannot be cursory. So cursory and or cursory, whatever you pronounce, the cursory and meticulous are opposite of each other, but both are not relevant. Disinterested. No one answered this option. I didn't see, but maybe one or two if they would have done. Why would someone completely take out this option? The first thing that you had to do was, if meticulous does not make sense, take it out. Because now after this particular understanding, you can clearly see there is no aspect of meticulousness being talked about the professor, and not about logicalness. And then surgery and arbitrary are completely opposite. These are negative traits, and we are only talking about positive ones. Okay. Why disinterested then? So I would rather pick disinterested just because I've taken out other ones, even if I don't know the meaning in this particular context of disinterested. So disinterested seems to be a very general word, but it's not. In this particular case, it has a secondary meaning, which is, if I show interest to someone, then I am being biased towards that. So disinterested has another meaning. If you just go to the Chrome and type disinterested, define disinterested, the second definition would come that you are being unbiased, you are being impartial, you are not showing interest to one side or another side. If I have given examples of something that I love, something that I really admire as a professor, maybe I'll mark them better because they have given those sort of explanations which I like because I'm more interested in them. But on the other hand, if someone has used some different examples, I usually make them on a lower grade. So since I'm not doing that, I'm being impartial. There is a comment. Isn't it the word fit for the no, it's not an odd word. So if you will understand the word, the meaning, it will definitely make sense. It would have been odd, and even then a correct option when you would have taken out other options and you're not sure about what this word means. This word clearly has a meaning, very specific meaning in every dictionary, which is being unbiased and being impartial. So you see how this can be tricky. If you will come back and think about your picked up option, you will clearly see that you were all not making sense with that option. Not because disinterested was the right option, because the meticulous, logical, cursory, and arbitrary do not make sense here. Okay. So meticulous is showing great attention to detail, very careful or precise. Staunch is being strong and firm, very loyal and committed. These are bubble words that came up around this, and this is how you should be building your vocabulary. And from here, we also got these different words. So this slide was mainly around that if you're practicing on one particular question type, you should be looking to some words related around that. These are all the words that came with the bubble thought approach. So I'll just for now, if it had a 2 hour session, we would have jumped into it. Now the next level of difficulty comes with this one. And it is that there can be 1, 2, or 3 blanks in one particular question. And you will have to pick all of those options correctly. What happens is that in this particular case, you have 5 options. Even if you would have picked a random option, there is a 20% chance you would have succeeded, but not in this one. If you randomly pick, it can be A, then D and G, but it can be A, D, and H. It can be A, D, and I. It can be then A, E, and G, A, E, and H, A, E, and I. So these are multiple tree options that come up, and random guess is not going to be very helpful. Okay, let's attempt this question. You have to make sense of the sentence by completing it with the right words. And you will have the option once you click, let's say the A is you think is the correct option, you click A, it'll get highlighted. Please read this sentence. And again, if the chat can be open, the Q&A, and you can share your combination of answers, it'll be useful. Uh, how do I? I think my screen is no more visible, right?
No, we can still see your screen, Zulfiqar.
Okay, okay. So please use the chat box, the Q&A, and share your options. How do I see Q&A? C, F, and G, A, D, and I. Can you also mention the confidence level you have in this particular combination that you have? Because this helps. If you have a high confidence in wrong options, that's a good point to stick on and then work more strongly around that. So first of all, the first hint that comes is that it's an untutored eye. In this case, the untutored eye would mean that you're not very familiar about, you're not very deep into something, and hence there can be some issues. A particular hill area around a particular place called Sudan. This is how you will be then approaching. You don't have to start thinking about what the Sudan looks like, how these Ardennes hills are there, but these are some words. They look like to an ordinary eye, to someone who is not very well experienced or exposed to those particular terrains, look like this and this, place through which to advance a modern army. Even with today's modern numerous and better roads and bridges, the woods and river muse from form a significant dash. So it seems like an ordinary person can consider that particular path to be quite easy. But even with the modern technology, it seems to be very difficult, or it can be other way around. But then there's a catch. So, for example, we are saying this sentence is referring to the earlier it used to be to ordinary eye, those paths and roads and ways to cross might look very difficult and this and this. But with the modern technology, uh, even with the modern technology, uh, they are um, easy. That doesn't make sense. Why? So you're pretty sure about the direction of the first as well as the direction of the other one. The first one, uh, since this says even with today's more numerous and better roads, so with the better and numerous roads, it is still something difficult. So your first clue can come from this one. Form a significant impediment. रुकावट आ जाती है आपके. So these are difficult to cross. These are difficult terrains. And then, because it's talking about an untutored eye, so these tightly forested uh, Andren hills might look simple to them. This is how it's approached. That is how it will fit well with this, even with change of direction keyword here. Impenetrable, inconsiderable. Let me quickly see what options have been coming up. Mostly drift around A to be the first. Impenetrable. Look quite impenetrable. Since you cannot speak with me, I'm again coming up with the questions that, okay, can someone explain why it would be impenetrable? For which to advance a modern army. So these raised of hands are not helpful, but if some comments come, yeah, that's right. That's right. My bad here. Uh, Definitely tightly forested will look towards impenetrable, but the thing that I was thinking around different lines, earlier approach was wrong. And the right approach is that this is not even with today's. So when even with today's, so today's technology is still not making it passable. It's not making it passable, so it's difficult to cross. So the previous untutored eye or even the tutored eye, so in this case, I would say untutored eye would be sort of not a very relevant information. And since these mountains are very tightly forested mountains, so it must be impenetrable. Let's first see if impenetrable comes there. And the second one should be around this. A makeshift, unpropitious. Would anyone pick option B here? Sorry, E. Uh, Let me show you why this option E is the correct option. And let me, how do I share the entire screen? And then I go here, then I go here. Can you now see the screen that I'm typing in Chrome? This will have a clear meaning. See, while this word may look very difficult, and it is, its meaning is very clear. Unpropitious. Am I making a mistake here? Unpropitious. Of course, this is unpropitious. Okay. Not giving or indicating a good chance. Unfavorable. So this path is unfavorable. These roads are unfavorable. And hence you can see, because these are impenetrable, these are not favorable. And it's not easy for an advanced army. It's not favorable for an advanced army to pass through those dense jungles. And even with, so in this particular case, the clue was not even with, by the way. The clue was this semicolon. Be always sure about this. The previous argument that has been given in the sentence preceding this particular special character, the next one endorses it. Endorses it with some even additional information and supporting argument. And that supporting argument, as we can see, is that even with the modern technology and more roads, it is still very difficult. It, it poses form a significant impediment. So the correct sequence would be A, E, and H. Maybe we are running a little. Okay. With my screen shared, you will have problem of not seeing all the things. I think this is good. Okay. Through which to advance the modern army. So it's difficult and unfavorable for them. And today's modern and numerous better roads and bridges, then it gives the way to impediment. We will skip this one. Sentence equivalence. Again, you will have one blank always. So the sentence equivalence questions are different. And you will have 6 options. And only 2 options will have words or phrases which will be able to fit into that particular blank in a way that they will make the meaning of the sentence equivalent. So if A and B are the correct options, just in case I'm saying, then A would also give the same meaning, equivalent meaning as the word B once put into that. The trap that comes usually is that as soon as someone who's not aware about biology would see this example, the macromolecule RNA and DNA, they might understand that, oh, this is very difficult for me. It has nothing to do with your knowledge of biology. Some RNA is common to all living beings, and DNA, which is found in all organisms except some bacteria, is almost as dash. Is something uh, that is very helpful for someone who is aware about how an English language flows with such type of words. What it's telling you is that something that came before is almost as dash in that particular characteristic. So RNA is common to all living beings. DNA also seems to be the case. However, there is an extra level of information he is giving you or she is giving you, the passage writer, is that bacteria do not have DNA. DNA, which is found in all organisms except some bacteria, is almost as dash. What would be the word? Even if we hide these options, we can clearly see that it has to be something around being available, being present in every organism or XYZ. So it is almost as, we still have the chat option going on. I would love to. Are people answering to this one? No, 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 no. You have to pick 2 options. It can never be a one option. And by the way, even if you pick one correct and one incorrect, your answer will be considered wrong. And if you do 2 incorrect, both incorrect, the answer will still get 0. So there's no partial credit. That's a very bad thing about GRE. You see, the purpose is to see how equivalent can you make the sentences with 2 words, making it sense. B, fundamental. No, fundamental, yes, but it's not about fundamentality that is being talked about. You see, you are again forgetting the point here. The point here is it is in the context, and the context somehow is that something is present in every animal, in every living being. That is the context. So while fundamental is good, but we're not talking about fundamentalness or a prerequisiteness of something here. We are talking about prevalence of everything. So you are present everywhere. It is being universal. So RNA and DNA is as almost as universal, which means RNA and DNA are both equally available. And ubiquitous would also have the same meaning. Okay, you will find the dictionaries and you will see ubiquitous also, but you can clearly take out comprehensive. It doesn't make sense here. And if comprehensive comes, there is no equivalent word for it. But in any case, it is not making sense with the context. It's not about comprehensiveness that we are talking about, that it is making some animal or organism fully fledged. No, not fundamental and universal. No. You see, fundamental and universal will never give the same meaning to the sentence. The same meaning to the sentence would be D and F, universal and ubiquitous. It is talking about the same sense. It's about making the same sense. It's highlighting again, it's sentence equivalence. Even if comprehensive would have made sense in this particular context, which it is not, even then, it doesn't have an equal parallel. The second word, if you pick D, would not give the same meaning to the sentence. The same meaning to the sentence will only come with these two words, and this makes sense with the sentence as well. So sentence equivalence is a little trickier in a way and easier in some other ways. Trickier because it requires you to not just pick two synonym words. It wants you to see what particular word would fit in the context, and then another word which may not look similar to the word, but when put into the sentence will give equivalent meaning. Okay, we are good with that. I will just now start with reading comprehension. There will be long passages. There can be five passages, five paragraphs, simple paragraphs, 2, 3 sentences paragraphs, or it can be a simple para as well. So reading passages can vary from 1, 2, 3, or 5 paras. You will have multiple um, questions around that. You will have single answer questions. You will have multiple answers. Which of the following 2, 3, or 4 options are correct? If there are 4 options correct and you pick only 3, you are gone. If there are 3 options correct and you pick 3 others, 2 same and one other, you're still gone. If you pick all those 3 and then an additional 4 options, you are still 0. And you have also some questions around sentence picking from the passage. And these topics, by the way, I would suggest you to read up on a National Geographic, Economist magazine, humanities related topics, social sciences, natural sciences, and the languages used in sort of a little bit of academic touch reading materials. There can be incomplete statements according to the passage, except this. So you have to be very careful about this, what is being asked. Except which are the following option, all options are correct. So it means that you have to pick which is not correct. Most likely, most likely agree with this, most likely disagree with this will require your ability to understand where the text was flowing, where the writer was making arguments around. And then there can be some questions around which of the following you consider to be true based on the material available. Please read this question, passage carefully and very quickly. Let's dissect this. First of all, you have to do active reading. Active reading requires you that if some word is coming, that even though you are very sure right there that whatever is coming, there will be a next part which will then go against it or make a twist around it. You will have to critically think, you will have to infer from the arguments, and then you have to understand the text structure, how the author is organizing his or her thoughts to convey a meaning. Writing is communication, and then communication can be done through different approaches. So how the text is structured. It will not ask you about grammatical questions, but you will have to understand this. Okay, let's see. There are multiple questions around it. What was the primary criticism of the magazines? There can be, what is the most likely reason the author contrasts East End theaters with the West End theaters? He is contrasting, right? What is the function of the passage, the discussion? So these can be questions around that. Why music halls were presented? What function it is serving? So author has mentioned something, XYZ, and now the question is asking about what function that particular mention is uh, serving. Another question, what can be inferred about the social class distinctions? It means this information that you will pick, one of them is correct, will not be present directly in the passage. So it will not be clearly written in that particular way. It is your inference about this particular aspect taken in the passage. Let's break it down. Let's see the first sentence. The role of the magazines. If you will follow with me for a little bit, you will see you just need to skip this particular second line. The sentence structure is role of magazines is seen in a particular way. In what ways will come? Magazines, some additional detail. The role of the magazines. What kind of role? As arbiters of 19th century taste. तो वो डिसाइड करते थे कि कौन सा टेस्ट चल रहा है, चलना चाहिए. That is the role. In that particular role, the sentence is being talking about. Is seen in their depictions in the London theatre. वो लंदन थिएटर में नजर आता था. ये बात हो रही है. The magazines accorded some legitimacy. और उस रोल को प्ले करते हुए they were able to accord some legitimacy to the East End working class theatres that mirror करते थे West End theatres फॉर्मेट द फॉर्मेट ऑफ द फैशनेबल. तो वेस्ट एंड थिएटर्स फैशनेबल थे, ये यहां से पता चल रहा है, लेकिन मिरर किस चीज को करते थे? फॉर्मेट में. लेकिन किस तरह से? कि देवर सर्विंग, जो वेस्ट एंड थिएटर्स से देवर सर्विंग मिडिल एंड अपर एंड क्लासेस, विच कैन गिव यू अ क्लू कि ईस्ट एंड थिएटर्स अपर और मिडिल क्लास को शायद नहीं कैटर करते थे, शायद लोअर और लोअर मिडिल क्लास को करते थे. हाउएवर, ठीक है, अब बात चेंज हो रही है डायरेक्शन. द मैगजीन्स ऑल्सो डिपिक्टेड म्यूजिक हॉल्स. म्यूजिक हॉल्स एक और उसमें कैटेगरी है, और म्यूजिक हॉल्स के लिए एक उसने एडिशनल डिटेल्ड इंफॉर्मेशन दी, एडिशनल डिटेल दी है, सॉरी, एडिशनल इंफॉर्मेशन कह रहे हैं, एडिशनल डिटेल दी है, विच कम्पीटेड फॉर पैट्रनेज विद ऑल थिएटर्स. और ये जो म्यूजिक हॉल्स थे ये compete करते थे पैट्रनेज के लिए. अब पैट्रनेज क्या होती है? पैट्रनेज होती है मैं और आप जब मूवी थिएटर्स में या म्यूजिक हॉल्स में टिकट लेके पैसे दे के अंदर जाते हैं, तो हम जिस चीज पे पैसे लगाते हैं हम पैट्रोनाइज कर रहे हैं उस चीज को, उस सेंस में ये दिया जा रहा है. एज प्लेसेस वेयर क्रॉस एंटरटेनमेंट करप्टेड स्पेक्टेटर्स टेस्ट. लेकिन वो कहता है कि वो जो पीछे अच्छा काम हो रहा था, यहाँ पे एक बुरा ये होता था कि ये एक क्रॉस और ग्रॉस किस्म की एंटरटेनमेंट को और मॉरल्स को प्रोमोट करते थे. इनको ऐसा दिखाया जाता है, डिपिक्टेड. ठीक है, और ये नहीं कह रहा ऐसा ही है, ये कह रहा है कि उन मैगजीन्स में म्यूजिक हॉल्स को ऐसा दिखाया जाता था. सो दिस इज हाउ द पर्पज इज थिंग्स. पहले सेंटेंस में आपको रोल ऑफ मैगजीन्स पता चलता है कि वो आर्बिटर्स भी हैं, 19th सेंचुरी में इंपॉर्टेंट थे शेप टेस्टिंग में. दूसरा ये भी पता चलता है कि लंदन थिएटर्स जो थे वो डिपिक्ट जो करते थे. मैगजीन्स अकॉर्डेड सम लेजिटिमेसी, ईस्ट एंड वर्किंग क्लास को लेजिटिमेसी दे रहे थे. सो दीस इंडियन थिएटर वर सिमिलर टू, दे मिरर्ड द फॉर्मेट. एंड देन हाउएवर द मैगजीन्स, उसके साथ ये कह रहा है कि ये नेगेटिव एस्पेक्ट था कि वो पैटर्नेज देते थे. बेस्ड ऑन दिस अगर हम सेंटेंस को पढ़ें तो ज्यादा क्लैरिटी से वो जो 5 क्वेश्चन है उनको हम सर्व कर सकते हैं. इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट इन विच इट अपीयर्स अकॉर्डेड मीन्स विच ऑफ द फॉलोइंग. तो वो उनको ग्रांट करते थे लेजिटिमेसी, अप्रूवल, एक्सेप्टेंस. सो दिस इज हाउ you can read up on this. And Zubair might have to jump. Zubair, can I take a couple of minutes extra?
Yeah, we can take a few extra minutes. So maybe
So
hopefully
yeah,
wrap up
I'll
by
just try
three,
to
five.
wrap it up in 2 to 3 minutes.
No problem, no problem.
And then maybe some broad questions. Okay. So you will have to find relevant information. You will have to distinguish the passage from the major and minor. You have to see the tone. You have to accurately inform some missing information, and then you have to draw some conclusions. We will give that. I want to. This is for a 2 hour session, so I just brought it up a lot of other slides. Okay, for vocabulary, my tip. We are now all out from all other sections. I'm just giving you some. Try to see imagination of words. This will be a much long memory um, support to you. Okay, so flustered is being disturbed or something. Flustered is around the same word, ruffled, and you will see a lot of these images that come up. So you should make yourself available. Uh, if you have 2 months for preparing GRE, I would say that you must spend your initial time in orienting about the passage and the question types. Sorry about this background noise. And then you should be uh, you should dive deep into the practice, and then where you get it wrong, you must spend a lot of time. So whenever you are attempting your questions, write it down and write that, okay, with 60% or 80% or 100% confidence, you are sure about this option. And if it go wrong, you must. These are some of the resources. I find Barron's GRE book very helpful. People ask about which resource to use. I think GRE Barron's has a very good explanation. Other books can also be very helpful. For more practice, you have USEFP libraries available. They have wonderful quality books on many other resources as well. For online, be very careful. There can be some tricky ones. Magoosh has very free resources available. Then they have a paid version if you're very serious about it. I'm not sure about the other ones, but usually there are trick contents available. Do not fall into traps. Some make it very easy, some make it very hard. They are not aligned with the refined approach of GRE. कॉमन गैप एरियाज वोकेबलरी डेफिसिट रीडिंग कम्प्रिहेंशन की काफ़ी हमने बात की उसके अराउंड लोगों के इश्यूज होते हैं कॉम्प्लेक्स आइडियाज को नहीं ग्रेस्प कर पाते बिकॉज वो सो ट्राई टू at initial level break down the sentences in this way. You can get a good help from chat GPT as well कि जी मुझे समझना है मुझे इसके फ्लो को समझाने के लिए ब्रेक डाउन करके बताएं कि बात कैसे फ्लो हो रही है कौन सी एडिशनल इन्फॉर्मेशन है कौन सी रेलेवेंट इन्फॉर्मेशन है लॉजिकल कंक्लूजन क्या है टाइम मैनेजमेंट के अराउंड इश्यूज होते हैं do not spend too much time on individual questions. Skip it, but answer it nonetheless. राइटिंग स्टाइल्स में यूजुअली कल्चरल बायस आता है आपकी रीडिंग फर्क है सो आई वुड सजेस्ट कि जिन लोगों की रीडिंग सिर्फ पाकिस्तानी बुक्स के अराउंड रही है दे शुड स्टार्ट रीडिंग अप a lot of other materials पाकिस्तानी context में I would suggest non के editorial and opinion page is very helpful but later on you should move 3 या 4 दफा कोई एक आर्टिकल अच्छा इकोनॉमिस्ट में से नेशनल ज्योग्राफिक में से साइंस मैगजीन में से पढ़ लें दैट विल बी गुड I think we can skip around other parts. I hope this was helpful. If you have some quick questions, I'll be very happy to take more time, but let's see how the USEFP team says. Manhattan is a good source. Yes, Manhattan is a good source. I'm not sure about how well they explain. I find Pakistani students to be very handy with the um, explanations that are given in the Barron's book. But Manhattan has good material. So for practice, you also need, please follow this advice. I make it a lot, but people don't follow usually. Uh, do not practice in large number of questions only. Practice, understand where you were confused. That option got corrected, got a correct answer. But still, if you are confused about that option, be very sure GRE cannot never have lose and answers. This answer option was definitely correct. Other options were definitely wrong. Be very sure about this and be sure in your understanding of that aspect as well. It's a very judgment call that how much of you have to skip. People say sometimes you skip first and then read questions and then come back. I don't find it very helpful. You have to find a balance, read it first time in a relatively good manner, and then when a particular question comes, go into the detail. But try to understand the entire passage. The overall sense should be clear in the first reading. Do not try to skim it a lot. 130 to 170 is not that important, but quickly that the percentage increase from 0 to 1 is infinity, 1 to 2 is 100%, 2 to 3 marks is 50% increase. So that percentage they wanted to curtail. So they wanted to take it very high, that difference between the 130 and 131 score is similar to the 140 and 141, and then 165 to 166. So each mark carries a similar percentage increase as well. These are very application type questions, and I think Fulbright USEFP team will be better able to answer. I can do that, but we are short of time. How many hours is the test? The test is almost 2 hours. So you have 30 minutes for the writing. First it comes, then you have four sections, two quant and two verbal interchangeably. First is quant, then the second will be verbal, and then quant, and then verbal. If the first is verbal, then second is quant, and then verbal, and then quant. 1 hour, 58 minutes. That's the duration of the test. I'm sure there are groups on Facebook and otherwise as well of the USEFP. They usually pass on support systems, and Zubair will be able to tell more. Under the school level comprehension exercises and practices. Um, to start off, yes, definitely good. But not very helpful. For a higher level, you must use GRE level materials, and generally to improve your reading, do read a lot. It always used to be the case. After September, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty um, guessing well that it is interchangeable, of course, and it's helpful. Your mind gets switched. Applied English, which one is GRE group? I'm not sure. Generally, how much time it takes to prepare for GRE? Oh, देखें, अगर आपकी तैयारी आज पूरी है, कितना टाइम लगेगा? हफ्ता भी लग सकता है। अगर आज आपकी तैयारी बहुत कम है, 3 महीने भी कम हो सकते हैं। सो वो तो जाहिर है आपकी एबिलिटी पे देखिए, दिस इज योर अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ वेरी लॉन्ग डेवलप्ड कॉन्सेप्ट्स एंड अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ टेक्स्ट एंड क्वांट एंड एनालिटिकल थिंकिंग, लॉजिकल थिंकिंग, क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग. तो इट कैन नॉट बी डेवलप्ड जस्ट बाय प्रिपेयरिंग ऑफ द टेस्ट. Preparation of the test gives you highest coverage for whatever your skills are, so that you don't perform less from that. Zubair, I think you can take it over now.
Yes, so most of these questions are, well, if there's any other questions, some of them are getting repetitive, but if there's any questions which did not
एक
get,
चीज
yes.
अब मुझे लग रहा है, ये अगर आपके पास 10 दिन है या कम दिन है, आई वुड से रश थ्रो ना करें. जो दो चीजें आप ठीक कर सकते हैं, टाइम आपको प्रॉपर देना पड़ेगा उस पर्टिकुलर क्वेश्चन टाइप पे या सेक्शन पे. स्पेंड ऑन दैट. आधी कच्ची 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 तैयारियां बाकी सारे सेक्शंस पे विल नॉट बी हेल्पफुल. सो प्लीज प्रिपेयर इन अ गुड डिटेल, जितना कर सकते हैं उस पर्टिकुलर पार्ट पे, क्योंकि जीआरई इज ट्रिकी एंड देयर आर ट्रिक ऑप्शंस, एंड इट्स नॉट कि आप स्किम करके और टच अपॉन टच एंड गो वाली अप्रोच ना रखिएगा. दैट्स ऑल आई वांट टू से. प्लीज जुबैर, सॉरी.
All right, no problem at all, no problem. We are out of time, everyone, for today. For those of you who are interested in learning more, or would you like, if you would like a longer workshop, on the 22nd and 23rd of January, you can note these dates down. On the 22nd and 23rd, we have two more GRE workshops, but they're in person and they're 2 hours long. And since those workshops are in person, hopefully your questions can get better answered because in online we have the hour limitation, right? So just put that on your calendar. If you're still interested in learning about the GRE quant or verbal sections, just keep these two dates in mind: the 22nd of January and the 23rd of January. Two workshops, one for quant, one for verbal, from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. You can register for
At
them
the
the same
USEFP
way you have
office.
registered for this workshop right here. They're going to be in the USCFP office in Islamabad. If you're not from Islamabad, there's an office in Lahore and one in Karachi. You can attend their in person workshops. But the one which I just talked about, they are in Islamabad on the 22nd and 23rd. All right. If you want to see the Karachi and Lahore workshops, go on the educationusa.pk website and see which ones are published. The in-person ones get published just about a week before, so you won't find them right now. I'm just telling you all for your information, so that a week before the in-person workshops, they'll get published, and then you can register for them. The reason we don't publish them in advance is because if too many people sign up, then we run out of space. So they're going to be published the a week before the workshop. All right. The recording of this session will be on our YouTube page in about a few, maybe check in by next week. All right. Anyways, if you have any questions, lastly, if you have any questions related to the Fulbright scholarship or any questions which that did not get answered today, you can email info@usefp.org. The email again is info at usefp.org. And with that, I would like to thank all the audience members for taking out the time. I hope this workshop was beneficial for you. Zulfiqar, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for this very
Thank you
interactive
so much.
workshop. We appreciate it. And with that, have a good evening, everyone. Take care and Allah
Take
Hafiz.
care.